Cocos Island shark attack. On November 30th, 2017, Rohina Bandari prepared for a scuba diving excursion with a group of 18 tourists at Cocos Island National Park in Costa Rica. Rohina was 49 years old and worked as a senior director at W.L. Ross & Company in New York City. The diving group arrived at the dive site known as Manuelita in the early morning hours. The water was clear with visibility extending to about 60 feet. Rohina was an experienced diver who had completed over 200 dives in various locations around the world. Her guide was Jimenez, a 26-year-old local instructor who had been leading dives in the area for 4 years. The group completed most of their planned dive without incident, exploring the rich marine ecosystem that made Cocos Island famous among diving enthusiasts. At approximately 11:20 a.m., the group began their ascent from depth. Following standard safety protocols, they paused for a safety stop at 15 feet below the surface. This mandatory 3-minute pause allows nitrogen to safely exit a diver's bloodstream. Rohina and Jimenez were positioned slightly away from the main group during this stop. Without warning, a large female tiger shark approached from the deeper water. The shark was approximately 10 feet in length and displayed immediate interest in the divers. Jimenez spotted the shark first and positioned himself between the predator and Rohina. He attempted to scare it off by creating a disturbance in the water with his fins. Despite Jimenez's efforts, the tiger shark suddenly darted forward with explosive speed. It circled once, then attacked Rohina directly. The shark's powerful jaws clamped onto her right leg first, inflicting a massive laceration that severed major blood vessels. In the frantic seconds that followed, the shark bit her left leg as well, creating multiple deep wounds. Jimenez immediately grabbed Rohina and fought to bring her to the surface. During the struggle, the shark bit his left leg, causing a significant but non-fatal injury. Other divers in the group rushed to assist, and they managed to get Rohina into their boat within minutes of the initial attack. Blood loss was severe and immediate. Despite frantic first aid efforts by the dive team, Rohina's wounds were too extensive. The combination of femoral artery damage and hypovolemic shock proved fatal. By the time emergency medical personnel reached the scene 47 minutes after the attack, Rohina Bandari had died from her injuries. Réunion Island shark attack. On September 19, 2011, Mathieu Schiller paddled out on his bodyboard at Bucancano Beach in Saint-Gilles, Réunion Island. Mathieu was 32 years old and a former bodyboarding champion of Réunion. The sea conditions that day were rough with swells reaching 6 foot in height. Approximately 20 other surfers and bodyboarders were in the water at the popular surf spot. Mathieu was 80 yards from shore in water about 10 feet deep. He had been catching waves for nearly 30 minutes. The area was not protected by anti-shark nets, which had been damaged by recent storms. Local authorities had posted warning signs about potential shark presence, but many experienced surfers continued to use the beach. At 3:30 p.m., witnesses on shore noticed unusual movement in the water near Mathieu. A dark shadow approached him from deeper water. Without warning, a large shark, later identified as either a tiger or bull shark, attacked Mathieu from below. The initial strike targeted his legs, severing his right leg at mid-thigh with a single powerful bite. Mathieu screamed for help as blood spread quickly through the water. His cries alerted other surfers who turned to see the commotion. Within seconds, 2 additional sharks, attracted by the blood in the water, converged on the scene. The second shark bit into Mathieu's torso, pulling him underwater momentarily. 4 nearby surfers paddled frantically toward Mathieu. One reached him first and grabbed his arm, trying to pull him onto his own surfboard. The strong current and continued shark activity made the rescue attempt nearly impossible. A third shark, estimated to be 11 foot long, circled the struggling group. As the surfers fought to bring Mathieu to shore, one of the sharks made a final devastating attack, tearing away a large portion of his torso. The force of this bite broke the grip of the rescuer, and Mathieu was pulled beneath the surface. The water around the site turned deep red with blood. The surfers continued their rescue attempts for several minutes, but the combination of aggressive shark behavior, strong currents, and deteriorating sea conditions forced them back toward shore. Coast Guard vessels arrived 18 minutes after the initial attack, but could find no trace of Mathieu in the water. Despite an extensive search operation that continued for 3 days, Mathieu Schiller's body was never recovered from the ocean. Marine biologists later suggested that multiple sharks had been involved in the attack, with feeding behavior continuing after the initial fatal injuries. The Loro Parque Orca attack. On December 24, 2009, Alexis Martinez arrived at Loro Parque in Tenerife, Spain, for a rehearsal of the Christmas show. Alexis was 29 years old and had worked as an orca trainer at the marine park for 2 years. The rehearsal was scheduled for early morning before the park opened to visitors. 4 orcas were housed at the facility, including a male named Quito, who weighed approximately 14,000 pounds. The Christmas show was a special performance that included complex behaviors from both trainers and orcas. Alexis entered the main pool pool at 10:30 a.m. to work with Keto on a specific sequence for the show. 2 other trainers were present as spotters, watching from the edge of the pool. The water was 54 degrees Fahrenheit, standard for orca habitats. Initially, the training session proceeded normally. Keto responded well to signals, performing behaviors including jumps and flips. About 15 minutes into the session, witnesses noted a change in Orca's swimming pattern. Keto began swimming faster and ignored several hand signals from Alexis. This was unusual behavior for the normally responsive animal. At 10:53 a.m., Alexis gave a signal for Keto to perform a rolling behavior near the surface. Instead of complying, Keto suddenly dove deep and approached Alexis from below. The orca rammed into the trainer with tremendous force, striking him directly in the chest. The impact was so powerful that witnesses heard a loud thud above the surface. Keto grabbed Alexis in his mouth and pulled him underwater. For approximately 30 seconds, this disappeared from view as Keto held him below. When Alexis resurfaced briefly, he was unresponsive. Keto continued to ram him and prevented the other trainers from reaching him. The orca pushed Alexis underwater repeatedly, releasing him only to ram him again. After 2 minutes of the aggressive behavior, emergency protocols were activated. Staff used nets and tones to distract Keto, finally managing to separate him from Alexis. 3 trainers entered the water with rescue boards and pulled Alexis to the side of the pool. He was not breathing when removed from the water. Medical staff began CPR immediately. The initial assessment revealed massive trauma to Alexis's chest and abdomen. Despite resuscitation efforts, Alexis showed no signs of recovery. He was transported to Maritimo Hospital in Puerto de la Cruz, where he was pronounced dead at 12:15 p.m. The autopsy revealed multiple compression fractures to his ribs and sternum, lacerations to his liver, lungs, and kidneys, and bite marks across his body. The official cause of death was listed as mechanical asphyxiation due to compression of the thoracic region. Sealand of the Pacific Orca incident. On February 21st, 1991, Kelty Byrne arrived at Sealand of the Pacific in Victoria, British Columbia, for her part-time shift as a trainer. Kelty was a 20-year-old marine biology student at the University of Victoria who had been working at the facility for less than 2 months. That afternoon, Kelty was assisting with a performance involving 3 orcas, Tilikum, Nootka 4, and Haida 2. Tilikum was the largest at 12,000 pounds and had been at the facility for approximately 1 year. The show concluded at 1:45 p.m. and approximately 20 visitors remained in the viewing area. Kelty was standing on the narrow pool edge wearing a wetsuit but no protective gear. The pool was 100 feet long by 60 feet wide, with walls extending 4 feet above the waterline. The water temperature was maintained at 50 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. While retrieving a fish bucket from the poolside platform, Kelty's foot slipped on the wet surface. She lost her balance and fell backward into the pool. The 3 orcas immediately changed their swimming pattern and converged on her position. Tilikum was the first to reach her, grabbing her left foot in his mouth. The other trainers shouted commands for the whales to move away, but the animals did not respond. Kelty was a strong swimmer with lifeguard training, but the orcas prevented her from reaching the pool edge. As she swam toward the side, Nootka 4 grabbed her leg and pulled her toward the center of the pool. Kelty surfaced once, shouting, "I don't believe this is happening!" before being pulled underwater again. The 3 orcas took turns pushing her around the pool, keeping her submerged for intervals of 30 to 60 seconds. Staff members quickly deployed a life ring attached to a rope, throwing it within Kelty's reach. Twice she managed to grasp the ring briefly before the orcas pulled her away. Visitors watched in horror as Kelty surfaced a 3rd time, gasping for air and screaming for help. Tilikum grabbed her again, this time dragging her to the bottom of the 35-foot deep pool. 2 male staff members attempted to distract the whales by throwing fish to the opposite end of the pool, but the animals remained focused on Kelty. For approximately 10 minutes, the orcas continued to pass Kelty between them, preventing any rescue attempt. By the time she surfaced again near the viewing window, she was no longer moving. Emergency personnel arrived at 2:10 p.m. but were unable to enter the pool due to the aggressive behavior of the orcas. It took over 2 hours to separate the animals into holding pens before Kelty's body could be recovered. The autopsy confirmed drowning as the cause of death. Tobari Bay. Great White Attack. On January 5th, 2023, Manuel Lopez prepared for a day of diving in Tobari Bay near San Carlos in Sonora, Mexico. Manuel was 53 years old and had worked as a commercial diver for over 20 years. He specialized in harvesting axe tripe, a shallow water mollusk that was in high demand at local restaurants. The water temperature that morning was 64 degrees Fahrenheit, with visibility extending to approximately 15 feet. Manuel arrived at the diving site with 3 other fishermen at 11:30 a.m. The area was known for occasional shark sightings, but attacks were extremely rare. Local fishermen had reported seeing a large great white shark in the bay during the previous week, estimated at 19 feet in length. Despite these reports, Manuel decided to proceed with his dive. The water depth at the harvesting location was only 9 feet, considered relatively safe by most local standards. Manuel wore a basic wetsuit and carried a collection bag, but had no shark protection equipment. He entered the water at approximately 11:45 a.m. while his companions remained in their small fishing boat about 30 feet away, watching for any signs of trouble. After 15 minutes of collecting mollusks, Manuel surfaced briefly to deposit his findings in the boat. His companions later reported that he seemed relaxed and unconcerned. Manuel dove back down to continue harvesting. The water was calm with minimal current, providing ideal conditions for his work. At precisely 12:07 p.m., a massive shadow appeared from the deeper water beyond the harvesting area. The great white shark approached with remarkable speed, covering 50 feet in just seconds. Manuel was facing away from the approaching predator, focused on detaching mollusk from the rocky bottom. His companions shouted warnings, but the sound did not transmit effectively underwater. The shark struck Manuel from behind with catastrophic force. The initial bite encompassed his head and shoulders entirely. The force of the attack lifted Manuel's body completely out of the water momentarily. Blood spread rapidly through the water as the shark maintained its grip. The three fishermen watched in horror, unable to intervene. The shark dragged Manuel's body approximately 30 feet through the water before making a second devastating bite. This attack separated Manuel's head and upper torso from the rest of his body. The entire attack lasted less than 20 seconds from initial approach to final bite. The water around the attack site turned dark red with blood. The fishermen attempted to recover Manuel's remains, but the shark remained in the area, circling aggressively. They retreated to shore and contacted local authorities. By the time a recovery team arrived 40 minutes later, Manuel's body had been carried away by the current. Only fragments of his wetsuit and collection bag were recovered. If you want to see more videos like this, click the video on screen now and make sure to subscribe.